Now we are.
I'm not seeing us live. Oh wait, hang on. I think I.
Yeah, I see the little red.
I'm gonna
rectangle.
downvote the stream.
1 minute old, already got 4 downvotes.
All right, let me see this.
Up and running, boys.
Jeez.
Ooh, we are. Okay, all right. We are live.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Hello. We are live. Excellent. Welcome to the tavern. New patrons and the patrons of old who've been here since the beginning. This is our first fucking live stream. Excellent. Hello. This is our AI images. We don't usually cover these except when we occasionally do videos.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, interesting fact. We unfortunately have no tavern lore today, except for the fact that there is an orc banging on our door, and I'm really tempted to give them toasty.
I mean, I'm always down for a good fight. We can do this.
Yeah.
The best bet.
Yeah, my money's on the crocagator monster.
On the Chaos Croxagore.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Hello. Welcome. If this is your first time seeing us, we're Grimlore. We fuck around and find out when it comes to Warhammer Fantasy.
The lore podcast for all your grimdark fantasy and sci-fi needs. Welcome to the tavern. Please pull up a chair if you're new. There is room for everybody.
There is room for everybody. We love having everyone around.
To be fair, Ray does most of the finding out. Everybody else is the one fucking around.
Yeah.
He's finding out about the consequences of our actions, so...
Yeah, he suffers for our sake.
Suffers forever? No way. All right. So, hello. Today, if you can read the title, which I hope a lot of you can, we're going to be covering probably one of my fucking favorite characters in Warhammer Fantasy.
And it's obviously a dwarf.
Of course.
Absolutely.
I mean, Snorri's pretty cool. Snorri's a pretty cool character. But no, we're not going to be covering a dwarf. Not yet, anyway. I got some plans for dwarf episodes. I'm really excited to cover for our many dwarf not viewers. Well, I'm gonna assume we have quite a few dwarven listeners as well, but
it's
the
all
members
dwarves,
of our
man.
tavern who are of the dwarven heritage.
Yeah,
But no, you guys
dwarves.
getting shelved today.
I've had Astro diligently put forth some dwarven propaganda while you were snorting some warpstone, so yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is snorting warpstone. Snorting implies I was taking breaths in between.
Breathing.
Excellent. Well, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to be spreading some elven propaganda because I am, if anyone couldn't tell, a huge fan of the elven individuals. They're all incredibly cool, and honestly, I wish Warhammer 40K had more characters, more cooler Eldar characters, because they're all kind of lame in my opinion. So
Yeah, pretty much.
take
That's
notes, I guess.
That's real big of
Take
you to
notes for
say
yourself,
that.
GW. Sorry, what was that, Joe?
I said that's real big of you to say that.
Oh, I 100% agree. I understand the minor hypocrisy, but honestly, every faction in Warhammer Fantasy is way more fleshed out than like most of the factions in Warhammer. Because outside of the Imperium, which has like all the lore in Warhammer Fantasy is evenly divided, with every faction getting some credibility to their actions.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Which I enjoy a lot. So, yes, today's the day that I get to finally cover. Well, okay, we covered elves in our first 2 episodes, in our second and third episode, but this one's gonna be like the official elven episode because you know me, I love my elves. So, let's get started by covering my boy Eltharion the Grim. As the title implies, the Batman of Warhammer Fantasy. Now, Eltharion is probably one of my all-time favorite characters because he's super fucking cool. Allow me to copy this image and send it in the Discord for you guys to take a look at. My buddy. I like him more than Tyrion, to be completely honest.
Elaborate.
Tyrion is like probably the main elven character. He's the current heir to Eltharion, him and Teclis, and he's my brother apparently. But I don't like him because at least mom remembered them. And here's
He's
one more
cooler than
picture of-
you.
We need to figure out like the share image print. Do you have like a present option on your tab?
Let me see. Do I have a present option? I believe I do. Now, if I present, does it present slides and PDFs? I have no PDFs unless I am copying them.
As much as I
Unfortunately.
hate to admit it, that is really good art. That is a really cool looking character.
Yeah.
It does go hard, especially the one with him and the Griffin. That
Yeah,
goes
the Griffin is like crazy.
that goes.
I honestly
Stormwing.
just thought it was like a big eagle.
That's Stormwing. That's his best bro. But okay. Fuck, Eltharion is so cool. So, okay, let's get started. So, Eltharion, best boy, coolest character ever in my opinion. Let me just pull up my notes on my boy because I had okay.
I have a question actually, because his chest plate looks pretty sick there. Is that armor stab proof by chance?
You're trying to be funny. You're trying to be funny, but it's not working.
Time for jokes.
Oh, that's an old pull. That's a deep pull right there.
Okay, you want to be completely honest? It actually is pretty stab proof, but it is not
I would assume
magic
so.
proof.
It's not bullshit Skaven proof.
Nothing is
No,
bullshit,
luckily the
Skaven-proof.
Skaven were not involved in this one, but a different asshole named Manfred was involved.
That's a good asshole
We
name.
finally get to talk about that asshole.
Is that the
No, just a
vampire
little
guy?
bit. There are vampires in it near the end.
Okay.
All right. So before I can fully cover Eltharion, though, it's important that I kind of give some context to Uthwan in general, because like we covered Uthwan a little bit in our second and third episode. But the thing about it is, okay, the best way to describe what Uthwan is it is 10 kingdoms. It's basically just 10 kingdoms that are divided into two categories. You have the inner kingdoms and the outer kingdoms. Let me just pull up a map of it for you guys. But for those who want a description of what the island looks like, it's an island nation, obviously, and it looks like a donut. The short reason why it looks like a donut is it used to be an actual island, and then during a civil war, a magical disaster happened that caused a massive portion of the island to go into the ocean, including the basically the center, which went completely underwater alongside the outer coast.
I'd say it looks more like a croissant.
Croissant.
A croissant.
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 Oh man, that looks like a complicated map. Let me zoom in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So the character of hang on, just give me 1 second to reply to this. So yes, the origin of our character of Eltharion the Grim will be taking place in it kind of takes place all across Uthwan, but the main location you guys have to worry about is the westernmost kingdom called Ivres. Ivres is how do I put this? So I described Uthwan as a paradise because it is. It's genuinely, when it was created, like it was created because this is warm fantasy. They were created by the old ones. It was a literal paradise island. Like it was the Garden of Eden combined with Atlantis, to put it as simple as possible. The issue, however, lied in the fact that during the natural disaster, so much of it went underwater and actually caused. It's still a pretty idyllic place. Like it's still idyllic. It's still a good paradise island so far. But the problem is, Ivres got the short end of the stick because everywhere else basically everywhere else on Uthwan is a paradise, and then Yvresse is basically like the Midwest. Like there's very sparse like when you think of the Paradise Island, um it's covered in trees, it's covered in lush foliage and vineyards. It's what you would imagine the Garden of Eden to look like. But the thing about Yvresse is there isn't very many forests. It's mostly how do I want to put this? Flat grasslands.
Like
Oh my
plains.
God, Slappy. We could always count on Slappy, can't we? We love you, Slappy. So, another thing about Yvresse is it goes by another name, and that is called the Kingdom of Mists. So, why it's called the Kingdom of Mists is the coast is almost completely covered in this like naturally dense fog. Like, this fog just naturally just rolls in, and for most of the year, there's this fog that just covers the entire coastline of Uthwan. Now, the thing is that this fog also hides a bunch of small islands that are kind of like making. Basically, if you wanted to try and reach Uthwan by trying to sail to Yvresse, you have to get past the mists, and then you have to try and not hit any of the islands, which are very difficult to see because of how thick the fog is. And to add even more to that, the fog is also okay. This is gonna be a callback to our Winds of Magic episode, but just bear with me as I make this description, okay? Fog, just in general, like anywhere there's naturally a fog barrier, that region is inherently susceptible to illusion magic specifically. And because of how prevalent this fog was basically like super like its weakness was illusion magic. Basically what would happen is that if you were to cast illusion magic in this fog, it would either be more powerful, more real, basically just take any illusion spell and scale it up a little bit. And it also meant that let's say you were to cast a spell on this fog, it would actually persist for a lot longer. So it made it
call back to
Yeah,
our
but-
Dark Souls, our last episode. Gwendolyn must have learned a thing or two from these guys.
yeah, with their
She
illusion
learned
magic.
a thing or two about a thing or two.
I happen to know a thing or two about a thing or two. Thank you, sir.
So to give people a little bit of context for Warhammer Fantasy's magic system, basically, the winds of magic, which are basically what the type.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep, he did die.
We may never know what's going on.
Lost the
The
voice.
world may
Mysterious
never
or
know.
unknown. Oh, go
There
ahead.
he is. He's back.
We lost you.
You went robot and then you disappeared.
Sorry, it's okay. I have returned.
It happens.
I was almost killed. All right. So, yes. For those that don't know, the winds of magic are drawn to places or things that are like tied to that magic in particular. So illusion magic is drawn to, hidden places that are mysterious or unknown. And so not only do you have to get past this fog, survive the islands, but you might get siren songs, visions that aren't real, or just expose all different types of like messed up illusion magic.
Which is great if you're trying to sail and you're lost.
Yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah. You're
Like
oh,
there's a statement that there are
presenting.
several ships that are just like ghost ships floating like on the sea there because
There we go.
people died.
See, that map looks way less complicated and much more colorful.
Island Nation of Uthwan. Perfect. So yes, Yvresse is the southernmost part, and those islands that are scattered around it, those are called the Shifting Isles, and they're the ones that are hidden by the fog barrier. Of course, you can't see the fog barrier because this is total war, and they can't have like an actual fog of war. Well, they can, but
It'd be complicated.
so
See if I can find it.
we have excellent context on Uthwan. So now here's another thing. the fog barrier is itself not only an advantage, like a natural benefit to the people of Yvresse, it's also a major weakness. But I'll get to why it's a weakness at a later point. So just, stick that in, put that as a thumbtack. So basically Yvresse was seen as like, how do I want to put this? Like the least cultured, the least high elf of all the elfin kingdoms.
Okay.
And part of the reason why was because you almost had to work to survive. Like, I don't want to say they were like struggling, because that sounds like that's not a fair statement. But like, where everywhere else was like bountiful, plentiful, they actually had to like work a bit harder to like reach those pinnacles that everywhere else had.
Was that intentional in the design? Like when the old gods were putting this together?
I don't believe it was. I believe it was like a byproduct of the island going under, because that region was not like the reason why the Shifting Isles are the Shifting Isles is because those used to be not mountains, but they were high points in the land that just got flooded, and because of the wind currents, the temperature, the location, and the presence of the islands themselves, it just created the fog barrier. So I don't believe Yvresse was like intentionally a bit more of a rugged landscape. I just think that it just got fucked up a little bit harder.
Okay, fair enough.
But yes, so that is the context of the Kingdom of Yvresse. Now, an additional thing about Uthwan in general, just to clarify this, is Uthwan has probably one of the most militaristic societies, if you guys can believe that.
Nice.
Okay.
Because okay, so let's run through Eltharion's origin story to explain why they have a very militaristic society. So Eltharion was a prince of the kingdom of Yvresse. Now, when I say prince, don't think like he's the son of the king, right? For the elves of Uthwan, prince is like synonymous with royalty, not royalty, with nobility. Basically, anyone who's a noble was considered a prince or princess.
Kind of like back in the historical Holy Roman Empire, like a lot of
Yeah.
their leaders were princes as well.
Yeah, exactly. Now that being said, though, they did have a king. Like, they did have a king who was, I believe, an elected official from among the princes, like the princes' families. Although different kingdoms had different rules of inheritance. Like, some are elected, some of them are specifically of familial lineage. On top of that, he was a prince, but even though he was a prince, because of both the location being Yvresse, having that a bit more of a rugged society, he wasn't exempt from like having to work alongside his fellow high elves of Yvresse. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, we're sipping tea, we're nobles. No, that's a little bit disingenuous as well to say that all the high elves princes were sipping tea and being dickheads. Not to say that some of them weren't, but I digress.
That
Of
sounds like a
course.
typical elf thing to begin with. So
Of course.
we're hitting the bat right on the money here.
Barely started, you're already sweeping up the reputation. I see how it is. I see how it is.
This is my political statement. High elves are amazing and dwarves suck. Thank you. Vote Ray 2026.
I was wondering why you brought me on this episode.
You, sir,
Just
are
to talk
outnumbered
down
to
to
be
you.
the one.
Just to be cringe to me.
Just to encourage the violence. All right, so yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. No, I wanted you on for the derailment. All right, so back to the point at hand. The thing is, to explain Eltharion's, how do we say it, his personal viewpoint and why I'm comparing it to Batman. So even though he did have that little bit of a rougher upbringing, but a bit more struggle to his upbringing, he was predominantly a general elf prince, a bit more cocky, shall we say, prideful, slight bit of arrogance, but you're an elf, so that comes with the territory. The thing was, though, he would kind of change just a little bit, just a little one dial on the edgy scale, shall we say. And the reason he got a little bit edgy is because when he was younger, and I mean like young for an elf, so like he wasn't like, oh, I was only 83. No, he was like a young man. Like, I've been a young man, like still an elf child. We'll put it like this. We'll put it that way. He ended up becoming he was the prince, and he was the son of one of the basically a really famous war hero. And that elf was sorry, that elf was Minorian, and he was just like, a really, he was I want to say amazing. He was a war hero effectively, and everyone kind of respected him, but he would also become the older brother to the prince Argolon. Now, the thing was that when Argolon was born, his birth came with the death of his own mother. So he became an older brother, but lost his mom. And this kind of hit his dad pretty hard as well, naturally, because elves are naturally emotional people. So, trauma hits them a lot harder. Now, the thing was, you might expect, standard story, you might expect Eltharion to actually hate his brother. You know what happens in Game of Thrones when Tyrion is born, he kills their mother. But that's not the case. In fact, it's almost the opposite. Because even though his mom died, he doesn't blame it at all on Argolon. In fact, he almost feels this basically like sets something off in Eltharion that makes him almost view elves even more, not more highly, that sounds a bit wrong. He basically values elven life even more than any other elf could. Like, among all, like, elves naturally care for other elves' safety and security, but for Eltharion, this came to an even higher degree, where even just knowing that elves were dying on a battlefield somewhere where he wasn't pained him all throughout his childhood. Like, it almost hit him hard knowing that there were people dying in general. And the idea that on Uthwan, they have the best medicine, they have the best healing magic. And even those two things couldn't combine, like, those two things combined could not save his mother, further hit him. Because it wasn't just, oh, these elves are dying on the battlefield somewhere, or this is sick and is dying on his deathbed. No, it was the very action of creating life itself that led to another elf's death. It was very not tragic, but it is tragic for a mother to die giving birth. But it's this added level of like the thing that should be bringing life into this world should not be ending it. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be. We shouldn't be trading We shouldn't be trading elven lives.
Mm-hmm.
So this really reflected him. Like this affected him very much.
Amanda.
Elven patriot. Oh. And okay, when I say elven patriot, what do you think?
Elven patriot?
Elven patriot, like the ultimate elf patriot.
Kane?
I'm imagining some kind of like, think of your most American, now slap on like maybe some tree symbols and give him pointy ears, and there you go.
Kinda. So, you know how the stereotypical American, I'm going to use Americans as an example, the one that most people identify as like, oh, they're arrogant, they're bashful, they're really into the military, the government could do no wrong. That's a lot of people's interpretation of of the American as like a parody. That's kind of what Eltharion was, wherein he was very pro order, very pro Uthwan culture, specifically Ivres, like the culture of Ivres, and very much into the very societal nature of Uthwan, because this is where I'll get to Uthwan being a very militaristic society in and of itself. Because the thing about Uthwan is every single elf, doesn't matter who you are, from the I don't want to say lowborn, because despite there being like an upper class, there's almost no like lower class. Everyone's either middle class or upper class. But by that logic, there should be no middle class, just an upper and lower class. Regardless, the thing
So what was the
was
whole
doesn't
thing with
matter.
what was the whole thing
Go
with
ahead.
Marathi? Or what was the whole thing in the Marathi episode where it was basically in Dungle's words, "Shut up, you're poor."
It wasn't shut up, you're poor. It was, oh hey, we're the descendants of great warriors. You're civilians. We have nobility in our blood. We have we have prestige to our name, whereas you guys do not. There was a very much a distinct distinguishing feature between those of people who believe themselves to be superior to other elves and those who, for the most part, weren't or didn't have that lineage or connection. And so it's basically created like these two conflicting identities. And when Marathi left, taking a bunch of these very extreme self-identifying high elves, the ones that prioritize themselves, a lot of the ones that didn't have that viewpoint stayed behind. So that's why a lot of the ones that stay behind don't really have this like, oh, we're nobles, fuck you kind of thing. What are you, a peasant? They're a lot more toned down because a lot of the more extreme ones got, taken away. Or not taken away, a lot of them left.
Yeah.
To propagate that
of,
belief. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of how this relates to interaction with other factions and stuff like that, is Eltharion what you would call a supremacist of sorts?
How do I want to put this? I would say a supremacist in that, because when you say supremacist, yes, he views his culture as superior, but not to the extent of oppressing others, but more to the extent that it is my culture's duty to be the best and to do what others cannot. Like,
but that
to
doesn't
put it,
necessarily mean conquest, or
it doesn't mean conquest. More, we will do what's necessary to make sure that things are okay. To put it in other words, consider this like the mantle of responsibility, Gerald, for the Forerunners.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Would you are more familiar with it? Like, I could try to explain it, but could you explain the the mantle of responsibility, just to give like a general baseline of it?
Okay, so for all you Halo adjacent listeners and now viewers out there, the mantle of responsibility is this title sort of taken up by the Forerunners, as in basically, since they're the most advanced sentient beings in the galaxy, it is their responsibility to uphold and maintain the biodiversity of the galaxy. So it is their responsibility to maintain that, to basically maintain and uphold that life and protect it at all costs. That's essentially what it's supposed to mean. Granted, they got very greedy about it, and that led to a whole lot of other things. So please refer to our episode on the flood for further context.
Yeah. So that's the best way I can describe it. That it's their responsibility to keep the world in order and to put whatever might cause chaos or disorder back into, like, to put it in its place.
Okay. So not like an annihilationist regime. It's very much based on a certain degree of order and balance between existing peoples.
Yeah, very much so. And I should say, though, it isn't like the supremacist point does come into play. Like, for example, he has come to the defense of Bretonia, the Empire, the Border Princes, so many other different like human nations. He's come to their defense. But let's say Bretonia and the Empire are going to war with each other. He won't get involved or try to stop the conflict. He will just protect them if they are ever attacked by someone he considers a threat.
Okay.
Now here's the question here. What would be enough of a threat for him to actually intercede or step in?
If it would spill over into a conflict for the High Elves. Like, let's say the Empire was taken over by a particular emperor who had a conquest regime going on, and he wanted to, say, invade Bretonia, and they were doing a very good job. But Eltharion, or any of the other High Elves for that matter, saw that and was like, oh, that's getting pretty aggressive. Like, if they stop there, or they like kind of tone themselves down, okay, whatever, we'll just let them do whatever they're doing. But if they keep this like warpath going on, we might have to step in and crush them into submission to make sure that it doesn't affect us in any way. Like, it's very much like a very aggressive defensive viewpoint. Like, he'll come to your aid and protect you, but if you might be a threat to him, you're going to become the next target on his like checklist.
So he'll mostly leave you alone unless you get too big for your britches, basically.
Yeah.
A very
And not only that,
Bismarck figure.
but he'll come protect you too if you're in danger, even if you don't ask for it, which has happened before with the dwarves. Yes, for real. He came to the aid of the dwarves on numerous occasions.
Ew.
This whole episode was planned to try to make me not hate the elves. I can see through your schemes.
Is it working?
He's pretty cool, I guess.
I
He reminds me
guess
of Bismarck, so.
No, well, sorry, he's one of the coolest characters. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So, anyway, yes, all elves are expected to join the military, or like to effectively, all elves, from the time that they're children, are given military training alongside philosophy and tactical education, as well as military history, as part of their curriculum in school. And on top of you needing to learn these things, but upon reaching adulthood, you are expected, no matter who you are, again, from the shut up, you're poor, to the richie of the richest high elves, have to serve basically a tour of duty in your kingdom's standing army. And if Wuthwan is ever attacked, forces from all across the kingdoms can rally their forces together. So let's say, I don't know, you become an adult and it's like, okay, you must now serve 3 seasons, because the high elves don't use months, they use seasons to calculate the year. So like, you must serve 3 seasons in the Kingdom of Ivres's standing military. Okay, you serve your tour of duty, and then you go back home, and then like 4 years later you have to repeat the process. So you're not like constantly in the military, but it does give every single elf some degree of military training, whether that be just basic self-defense, hand-to-hand combat, to swordsmanship, to literally serving the military and having war experience if the nation is ever attacked. So that's a good thing. Now, here's another thing though. When I mentioned these military curriculums as part of these schools, don't compare these military curriculums to like sports. Like, if you know how in some high schools, if you excel at like, I don't know, football, you might get a what's the word?
Scholarship?
Scholarship to a university or college. The same thing can happen for the high elves when they're in for this specific like military thing. So like, let's say you're someone like Eltharion, who, because of his upbringing, basically putting so much value in elven lives, he, to an extent, is not just an elven patriot and like the most elf to ever elf, not just elf to ever elf, but like one of the, like such an elven, not supremacist, but like nationalist.
Mm-hmm.
This manifests in an intense duty for him. Like, if he is not reaching his peak ability, if he's not like, doing the best thing he can possibly be, then he considers that a failure. And he kind of views that if he's not like, if you tell him to like, I don't know, you tell him to guard this door, he will guard that door for as long as you need it guarded. Because if he thinks that not guarding that door will jeopardize elven life or jeopardize the future stability of Wuthwan, he will not do anything to jeopardize it. He will not just maintain it, but like aim to solidify it, to rectify any things that might be wrong with it, and to improve it to the best of its ability, because he thinks that's what he needs to do, what he needs to be, very much like Batman, trying to be the world's greatest detective, martial artist, everything, because he thinks that's his duty.
Right.
Same concept for Eltharion. And so, to go back to the scholarship topic, because of how much effort he put into his studies, from basic education, from just simple histories, social studies, mathematics, all that stuff, to even like the most intense war doctrine that they could teach in the schools that he went to, he was actually basically given a scholarship. The thing was that instead of continuing on with like the remaining of his teachings, like the remaining of his schooling, he could stop schooling and go straight to joining the basically, it's like an elite academy. So, to go back to the school example, imagine you're so good at a particular sport at, say, grade 10, at around 16 years old. you could be poached by a team, for example, who see your potential, and they will take you, personally train you, and then you'll become a member of that team, not even having to finish your last 2 years of schooling. Same concept.
Okay.
Basically my high school.
What was that?
So basically my high school.
Yeah. Very cool. So that's basically what
They pulled
Eltharion
you out
was.
and sent you right to college?
Not me. I couldn't play nothing.
Oh,
Scared to go to college. But yeah, that's basically what happened for him. He ended up actually joining he was recommended to join the Sword Masters of Hoeth, which are how do I put this? They are the best swordsmen in all of the Warhammer Fantasy world. Like on a 1-for-1 scale, there is no more skilled swordsmen. Like take any faction, take any faction's greatest duelist / like swordsman. None of them can compare to a swordmaster of Hoeth, with the only exception potentially being Druki. Are they witches? Whatever the Druki equivalent of a swordmaster is. So like only they could potentially equal or surpass them. And to put in perspective how skilled a swordmaster is, knowing that the phrasing, spend 1,000 hours and you become great at whatever skill you want to practice. For the
Mhm.
swordmaster of Hoeth, 10,000 hours isn't even enough. Like you can't 10,000 hours wouldn't be enough to be considered like potent at the specific type of training that a swordmaster is expected to have. So these guys are insanely like how do I put this? Insanely extreme with their expectations and standard of combats. Now, pretty cool dude so far. Pretty cool dude.
cool.
Except he's a dropout.
oh, yeah.
Oh, disgusting.
Yep. There it is.
Such an elf thing to do.
Okay,
I'm
in
too
his
good for
defense-
this.
I'm gonna say it, and it's gonna sound kind of like that, but it was basically like I don't need to learn anymore. Like I know enough. I don't need to know anymore.
I have surpassed my learning.
know anymore.
It's not okay. It's not to say that like he thought he was too good for it, but it's more like
He thought he was too good for it.
I've reached the peak of my ability as a swordsman. Therefore, there's no point in staying here because I can't get any better than I am now. Not in a type of like, oh, I'm the best, but more in like like let's say someone was like, "Okay, run as fast as you can." You do this over and over and over again, and you just you hit that wall. You could spend like another few years just trying to train more and more and more, but you could not pass that wall. Same concept for Eltharion, where it's like, I'm as good as I can be right now. I can't put any more time into this because I'm not going to get anything more out of it. That's more of a better way of explaining it than the I'm too good for this.
That sounds same to me.
I'm too good
Yeah.
for any of this, peasants.
Also, to put into perspective, some of the skill of the Swordmasters of Hoeth, they're so precise and experienced with their ability. They keep in like their overall ability. They keep what's the word? They keep in mind the weight of their eyelashes when they're swinging their sword. Like that is how specific and like anal they are.
Sounds pretty lost on the path to me.
Oh, 100%. They're 100% exarchs. I should also mention, in addition to studying the Swordsmasters of Hoeth, he also went to learn magic. Now, once again, like with the Swordmasters of Hoeth, he basically was like, I think I know enough. Like again, it's not in the sense of like I can't get any better than this. I'm the best there ever was. No, it's like I can't get any better than this. I'm okay with what I can do now. Like again, Eltharion's viewpoint is I must be the best I can possibly be in everything I can be good at. Otherwise, I'm failing.
He's not the. He doesn't consider himself the best swordsman in the realm. He just considers himself as best as he can be at that point,
Yes, exactly.
like
Jack
fulfilling
of
his
many
potential.
trades.
Yeah. Same with magic, and same with basically everything he studies. Now, I should mention at this point, Eltharion was still a young, like a young elf. Like he wasn't like okay, he wasn't into his first. He was still in his first century, so like he wasn't over 100 yet. So he was still a pretty youthful elf. If I'm going to be honest.
Okay, because I was
Now,
going to ask, like, what is established as like young for the elves? Because obviously we know they can live millennia, but
well, Marathi and Malekith are special cases because both of them are using additional magic and medicine and alchemical things to prolong their life. But the standard seems to be that most don't live more than 1,000 years. Like just looking at the reign of some of the high elf Phoenix kings, most of them seem to only. I think the longest reign for I think it was 500 years, almost 500 years. But you can become a Phoenix King until you're of a certain status and age. So you can't be like 100 and become a Phoenix King. I mean, maybe it's an elected position, but for the most part, only older, more respected Elven kings could become a Phoenix King. So you can kind of assume that none of them are over 1,000, but they're definitely well into a first like well over a few centuries old.
yeah,
And I should also mention that Eltharion was about was it 300? I think he was 300 years old. No, he was 200 years old. He was 200 years old when the end times happened. Yeah, he was 200 years old when the end times happened, and he still looked like he was in his prime. So if you want to try and do the math and say that like 100 years, like when you reach like 200, you're like in your 20s or 30s, you can kind of
Yeah.
assume that like, by the time you're 1,000, you're going to be like 100 and die.
I was gonna say the universe
Regardless, though.
ended when he was like 28. He was still rocking in his prime.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, he died before the end times happened. He didn't make it to the end, which is fucking ass.
Okay,
But
that's brutal.
but then again, we should ask: isn't that a good thing though? Because then he wouldn't. Then they really wouldn't have fucked up his character at that point.
no, but they did fuck up his character with how he died. But that's the point.
So
Well, not killing him.
either way, Ray, you lose.
Well, okay, if I'm gonna be honest, his death was in character, but he shouldn't have died.
Just elf
Like
things.
how we, like what, like it's like okay, spoilers for Game of Thrones season 1. You know how Ned Stark's death is tragic, but like it's super in character for him.
Yeah.
That you mean for
It's-
Sean Bean?
Yeah.
Warmer.
It's kind of the
Sean
same concept
Paul.
with Eltharion. Honestly, Eltharion gets kicked in the nuts a couple times through his lore, and then I think about it. Um, so, the thing was that in his youth, again, quotation marks, is when the is it called the Great Elven War happens. Basically, the concept is Nagaroth, the Dark Elves, the Druki, end up trying to launch another invasion of Uthwan to take it back. And once again, this invasion is led by Malekith. So, for those who don't know how the relationship between the Druki, the Dark Elves, and the High Elves work, the nation of Uthwan is basically constantly at war with Nagaroth. Now, the only difference between over the course of time is this can either be a cold war, an invasion, or a counterattack. It's one of those three. It's one of those three things. It's either a cold war, an invasion, or a counterattack. And what happens is during the Cold War phase, it's both sides are amassing power, resources, trying to assassinate each other.
Trying to get to
You
the
know,
moon
they're trying to
first.
yeah, they're trying to like create opportunities for one another. Then there's the invasion, which is where Nagaroth forces invade Uthwan.
Has it ever been the
And
reverse? Because like you always hear about Malekith starting invasions of Ulthuan, but have they ever tried to counter invade or just straight out invade to just cut
uh,
the head of the serpent, as they would say?
I'll put it this way: all of them fail except one.
Okay.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing. The first person to succeed is a topic of today's episode.
Naturally.
It's almost like you planned this on purpose.
Interesting.
It's
Yes,
like
yes.
poetry. It rhymes.
So, so here's the thing about Eltharion. During this Great War, Gerald, would you mind pulling up a map of Uthwan itself?
uh,
All right.
That
So
would
while
be
this,
Toast.
while Gerald,
Toasty's on picture duty, so
Yeah, it's me.
okay,
He's going for it.
okay. So
He's
excellent.
Duck, go. It looks like.
All right. So to put it in perspective, Nagaroth is positioned to the north west of Uthwan. Well, northwest and sorry, not northwest. Yes, it's positioned to the northwest and east. Oh wait, hang on.
I was gonna say, you want to zoom in on that, Toasty?
do you want
I'm
like a map
trying.
of like the old world,
Every time I open
basically?
it, this
Oh,
does.
never mind. Rip. It broke.
Maybe
Oh,
broke
sad.
You broke the image.
You died.
regardless.
You died.
All right, so there we go. That's a
Ha-ha.
good one. All right.
A good one.
So, to the left of the screen is Nagaroth. To the right of the screen is the old world. And what happens is Nagaroth usually invades. Now they will invade either through Tiniok, which is the sorry, when I said Yvresse was the westernmost, I meant most. My fuck up on that one. Yeah, so they'll either invade through Tiniok or Nagarath. Nagarath being the ancestral home to Marathi. And when they invade these two places, those two places are almost, I don't want to say they're like Cadia because they aren't. Cadia is more to the north. But like these are almost like these are the regions that are always being fought after. Like Nagarath is a pretty forested, very magically rich location, and Tiniok is a pretty I don't want to say it's lush. It's a very, very rich culture, very prosperous area of everything. So these two regions are constantly like stuck, like they're basically fought over by Nagaroth, with the High Elves basically fighting across it. The thing is, though, during the Great Elven War, Malekith actually ended up pushing and taking Nagarath and most of Tiniok. Now, the thing about Uthwan, though, is you'll notice that the Inner Kingdoms and the Outer Kingdoms are separated by a massive mountain range. So, in order to get into the Inner Kingdoms, you would have to circle all the way around Nagaroth. Sorry, not Nagaroth. Circle all the way around the donut into the one area where there's no mountains to get to the Inner Kingdoms. Except on previous attacks, Malekith was able to force his way through the mountains, which ended up forcing the High Elves to create a series of gates. There are 5 gates that are positioned across the mountain ranges, and the thing is, these gates are like, oh, nothing can break through the gate. Nothing can break through these gates. Yeah, no. Malekith broke through one, and ended up messing up the Inner Kingdoms a little bit.
Tested that theory real quick.
Yeah. And then he broke through them a second time when he went back up. So basically, he broke through it to get into the Inner Kingdoms, fought a little bit, and then was forced outwards, and ended up making his way into Nagarath. Now, the thing was, if you remember, Yvresse is on the eastern side of the continent. The thing was, though, even though he was so far removed from the conflict, Eltharion was drawn into it. Like, again, he's a very strong patron of the High Elves. His nation's under attack. No, I am going to fight. Now, the thing was, during these, even though he was incredibly skilled, potent warrior, potent in magic, this Great Elven War was so like intense that he was basically another foot soldier. Was the impact he had on this conflict.
Same.
Now, I should mention, in this conflict, his forces were also being led by Teclis and Tyrion, who again are the current inheritors of Anarion. They are the current heirs to Anarion's throne. So these two are obviously, they have plot armor and they're amazing, and they were a little bit older than Eltharion, which in the case of elves makes them better, like stronger proportionally. And it was in this conflict that Eltharion actually witnessed not just the brutality of the Druchii, of the Dark Elves, seeing the terrors they commit on their own people, seeing them not just kill and slaughter, but like abduct children in order to brainwash them into more Druki followers, breaking into the dragon pits in order to steal dragon eggs, killing a number of what are they called, the Narian riders? Not Narian riders, Eltharion riders. It's the kingdom just north of Ivres, and that's where a lot of Eltharion's regiment was fighting a lot there, where he saw, again, direct conflict with the Druki, seeing how brutal they are, until he was actually forced further back to his home kingdom of Ivres. And it's in Ivres that he actually witnessed the final battle between Tyrion and Malekith. Well, not Tyrion and Malekith, sorry. Basically, there was a conflict, and in the middle of the conflict, Eltharion was basically all the forces were told to stand down, and the victor would be decided by an honor duel. And Eltharion watched this honor duel go on, which was basically both sides would continuously throw champions at each other until one side gave up. It was basically Pokemon battle, and Malekith threw his greatest warrior out. The High Elves threw their greatest warrior out. He was killed instantly. They put in their next greatest warrior. He died instantly. Tyrion was like, fuck this. I'm going in myself. Even though he was considered like a really important individual, his life should be considered priority. He went in anyway. And it was actually seeing Tyrion basically willingly throw his life away that actually inspired Eltharion to kind of see him as this guy's awesome. Like, I like Tyrion a lot myself, but it's because I like Eltharion, I can respect him also liking Tyrion. It's like, yeah, game respects game. You respect him, don't you? That's fucking cool. And eventually, Tyrion does manage to kill Malekith's champion, causing Malekith to, fight Tyrion. They end up winning and pushing Malekith out. And all the Dark Elves are actually forced off of Uthwan. Now, here's the thing. What do you think Eltharion thought about the elves, the Dark Elves, invading and then finally being pushed back?
Pathetic.
Basically. But here's the thing. Not only does Eltharion value elven life extremely well, most elves view the Druki as like almost pitiable. Like, they're misguided. We can't trust them. They're inherently evil, but there's a point of that where you're like sympathetic towards them. Eltharion is in the other camp.
Nice.
Kill them all.
So let me ask this real quick then. Like, are Druki and High Elves established as like totally different, or are they all basically the same version of elves? Because like if you look at this from 40K, like the Craft World Eldar, they're almost treated as like a separate species from the Drukhari in sense. Is that kind of what's going on here between the Druki and the High Elves, or is this something, or is it
depends who you ask? Depends who you ask. If you ask,
well, I'm asking you.
High Elf. Okay, well here I'll tell you what the elves in the setting consider. The Druki consider the High Elves to not even be elves, that they are pretenders, usurpers, that they aren't true elves. That unless you are a Druki following the true path of the Druki society, elven supremacy to the nth degree, you aren't considered like much of anything. That's why they're willing to enslave fellow elves or brainwash them. The Uthwan elves, or the High Elves, the High Elves consider the Druki their cousins. Like we're still both elves. You guys are just misguided, confused, pitiable. There's something about you that we can forgive, and we can we can maybe build a bridge if you guys can come back to the side of the light, which has happened on some occasions.
Like 6 times.
Sorry, what was that?
It's like your cousin that's been to prison 6 times, and he's a real asshole.
Yeah, basically. Now, however, that's one camp. The other camp has one person in it, and that person is Eltharion, and he thinks that the Druki are a totally separate species that deserves to be genocided.
Okay, I'm starting to like this elf now.
Take them down.
Oh, Ray, you
See,
knew
this is
exactly how to
why-
pull me over.
This is why the Eldari didn't get any good characters. They took that guy and just turned him into Sanguinius.
Yeah, basically.
The sanguineous of the elves, as one would say.
Like, let's say there was okay, let's say there was a Druchii that was about to be hanged for his crimes, right? A very sympathetic high elf might be like, "No, wait, don't kill him. He can maybe be saved if he's willing to
I can
learn."
fix
And then
him.
Eltharion is like, "Nah, don't hang him. I'll cut his head off myself."
Oh,
I can see why
I'll
you
take
also.
care of this.
I can see why you also sent our pirate king an invitation to this here chat.
Save the rope. I'll use my sword. Oh, I love Eltharion. Now, because of this basically rage and I want to say minor survivor's guilt because he was nothing. I don't want to say he was nothing on the battlefield, but like he was just another soldier. Whereas Tyrion and Teclis were deflecting spells, defeating champions, making a name for themselves. And it wasn't like a vainglorious thing, like I want to be one of them. No, Eltharion it was literally just like I was useless. I would like let's say someone's choking and you don't know CPR. There's a part of you that's gonna feel inferior because you couldn't save that person if they happen to die. Eltharion was the same way where it's like, I'm not fucking good enough.
right.
That needs to change.
Like serious survivor's guilt kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, because
That's,
of this,
I love Astro's comment right here. Ray, would you like to read it out loud, please?
Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't
God.
want to say it out loud because I knew I would fumble it, so I figured I would write it down first. It's from an
Eltharion was
existing
once
quote about communists.
oh my god, Eltharion was once asked what it felt like to kill thousands of elves. Eltharion replied, I wouldn't know, I've only killed Druchii.
Oh man.
I mean, yes, that is an Aryan to a T. Although
yeah.
I will say, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just I was cheering him on, if you will. Go ahead.
Yeah, you go an Aryan or not an Aryan. Oh, you know what? He should be an Aryan. He would have. Sorry. So Eltharion.
Tavern drinking game. Anytime Rayway mentions an elf name and says they're awesome, take a drink. Anytime he confuses an elven character with an Aryan, take a glug.
Hey, an Aryan is the coolest elf. Okay, well, you know
Alright,
what? No,
let me get my
Eltharion is
shots.
the coolest elf.
Eltharion is
So-
is the coolest. He's got a bit.
All right, so here's the thing. Because of Eltharion's Survivor's Guild, alongside his, shall we say, minor hatred of the Druchii, he amassed a bunch of basically militia forces from across Yvres, alongside further collecting more from Eltharion. I believe. Basically, Bretonia if they were high elves.
Okay.
So they're very good horseback riders. And they have a very funny penchant for reaving, which is really funny to think about the idea that there are elf reavers that are high elves.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes them very fun though is Eltharion collected basically the best forces from his kingdom, then the kingdom over, and then went over to Nagarath where they have a bunch of basically like really skilled archers that particularly fight really well in guerrilla warfare. And he basically rallied them as well and united all of them under the simple goal of, hey, fuck the Druchii, right?
What a
And normally the counterattacks following Nagaroth invasions are simply just like sack a couple cities, destroy a couple things, and then retreat. Nah, not for Eltharion. You see, Eltharion, when I say it was an invasion, I mean it was a legitimate invasion. Like his forces rolled up onto Nagaroth's coast and city by city, like literal city by city, he had them sacked and razed to the ground. Any elf, any Druchii that tried to escape was hunted down by the Reavers and slain. There were no prisoners taken. There were no survivors. Everything was burned and destroyed. And the reason why there were no survivors is because he couldn't allow his force to be discovered on Nagaroth. Because, funny enough, he was invading Nagaroth with a incredibly small force, but they made up for it with with not only their skill, but their combined collective hatred and vengeance of the Druki. But I should mention, while a lot of them were vengeful towards the Druki, they still saw them as their cousins. Eltharion did not.
This makes me think of that good old Game of Thrones quote with Bronn just going, give me Falcon, men. I'll impregnate the bitch.
Yeah, basically. Except in this case, it was I think it was 20 regiments, which is like still a big number, but like not a big number for what he's doing. Especially when you consider like elves usually have a very elite small forces. Regardless, yeah. So city by city, everyone was killed. No survivors were permitted until it got to the point that Nagaroth, that like the forces of Nagaroth were starting to realize something was going on. Like they didn't like they were putting a good dent into their forces before Nagaron, like the forces of Nagaron, which is the capital city of Nagaroth, finally figured out something was going wrong. With Malekith kind of being like, what's going on? Like, we're not getting reports from these coastal regions. Something is
Why
going
am I
on.
missing a dozen cities?
Yeah, basically.
Where'd they go?
What's this? We're not getting taxes from 20 different cities? And what are these? 20 pleas for help. These
came
must be
late.
related. Now, here's the thing. 20 cities, like 12 cities is probably a good estimate, especially when you consider the amount of murder they committed. The thing was, they finally reached Nagaron, which was the capital city of Nagaroth, like I was saying. Tosi, or whoever's in charge of the images, can you pull up a picture of Nagaron?
Be very careful how you type this into the search bar.
Yes.
Exactly. Please.
2 G's.
2 G's.
Yeah. Right there. Maybe maybe add yeah, there we go. So that is the city of Nagaron. So pretty cool city.
Oh, that's a
Pretty
sick
horrible
picture.
place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That
looks like it.
fucking goes hard.
It became a Blackstone fortress.
So, yeah, basically.
It was Malekith's personal fortress that crashed into the coast and just stayed there, becoming his massive fortress city.
It was like a ship.
If only that happened to Dungle's ship. Maybe we can actually stay put and stop crashing everywhere else.
Now, the thing
I'm only
was, you
slightly
might think-
bitter.
All right, now looking at this, how the fuck do you invade this place, right?
You don't.
Well, no, you don't. You let
Nuke it
you
from
you,
orbit.
you nuke from orbit. Maybe. You know what? Eltharion did?
What?
He took his basic soldiers and was like, "Hey, you know all those people we killed? It's a good thing we kept their armor." And he had his basic soldiers don, Druki armor and just walk in.
Nice.
Once they were in,
Trojan horse.
one half of the force that was inside opened the gates for the other half to rush in, and while the other half was inside, they just ran riot. Like they just let loose. They sacked the city like it was goddamn Troy.
I guess one did simply walk into Mordor that day.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I should mention, this city was sacked and there was blood in the streets.
My kind of man there.
Eltharion is what we consider a badass. Now,
This
here's
is
the
a
thing.
pro gamer move right here.
Yeah. Now, eventually, a lot of the elves kind of like, "Hey, we've had our fill of vengeance. It's time for us to go." Eltharion was like, "Yeah, I agree. I think we've made our point clear here. It was like, I think we've done enough.
No.
Rivers of blood pouring down, dead Druki heads going on, a bunch of gold and treasury stolen, temples to Cain and other dark gods shattered and destroyed, and they just leave. They leave the city in flame and ruin, up until they get to the passing where Malekith is waiting, because he was not at Nagaron. He left the
Oh.
city alongside a number of his forces and his big-ass dragon, Seraphon, and were basically waiting to see what Eltharion would do. Like, they seen what he was doing and did not get involved.
Wow.
Respect.
I mean, they probably could have, but they would have had to try and retake their city. But
A little bit.
I do, I do want to stress that they did not get involved while he was being sacked. Now, the reason why is because when Eltharion and his forces reached Malekith, he told them very simply that he was impressed with Eltharion.
Real recognized real.
Bro just let his own capital city get razed, and just said, "Impressive."
Yeah.
Yeah. He also looked back at the trail of bodies that he left.
You just
He
watch
also
somebody
looked at the-
massacre your capital and like half your country, and just like, you know what, that was pretty cool.
I can just hear Dungle right now,
GGs.
just going, "Yes, good population control right there."
Not only that, but it wasn't just like how he did it, murdering everyone, raising cities, sacking the capital. He looked at what he did it with. A relatively small, undetected force of elite troops, but they were still just like kind of regular dudes, right? They weren't like he didn't have any sword masters or spellcasters with him. He just had, horseback reavers, standard soldiers, and some shadow archers, all of which were skilled guerrilla warfare fighters and everything. Like, I'm not gonna like diminish their skill or whatever, but they weren't the best of the best. They were just pretty good in their fields. And that's also what impressed Malekith. He was like, you know what? Respect. And he straight up told Eltharion, lay down your arms and join me, and you and your entire force can be welcomed in as one of my generals. Which is nice, but additionally, Malekith has a thing of, offering people a chance to join him, but they have to prove themselves by killing some of their own forces. So the fact that Malekith straight up said, you don't have to prove anything to me. Just bend the knee, and you and all your forces are allowed to join me. Now, do you think Eltharion accepted this deal?
I think he said probably something
Of
along
course.
the lines of, "Suck a fat one, Malekith."
You gotta have some real
Basically.
balls to watch somebody do that kind of damage to your otherwise impregnable capital, and just be like, you know what? If you join me, I'll totally forgive you. Like, that's serious balls right there.
Yeah, very true.
What I'm hearing is Malekith is awesome, and so is Eltharion.
I won't deny
maybe
that.
one of those, maybe.
Hey! I was a shield ever since the second episode. I always thought he was cool
Yeah.
until he wasn't.
Eltharion basically did say sucker fat one Malekith, and this immediately followed. And like none of his forces, like you might expect some of his forces to be like, maybe we should join them. No, none of his forces were willing to side with Malekith either. So he had a completely unified ideology against Malekith's forces, but they still outnumbered his forces like 3-1. So not only did he have to fight his way out of Nagaron through the overwhelming majority of the Druki forces, but then he had to fight his way back to the coast in order to escape. The problem is Eltharion has a bit of an issue with Druki, if you couldn't guess.
Oh yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
this tends to manifest in the form of uncontrollable rage, shall we say. So when Malekith not only offered him to join him, and he said no, this then followed with the following words of, fuck you, Malekith, I'll cut off your head, you stupid bitch, as he ran at the Druki Witch King.
Nice. Nice.
Which immediately forced his own forces to also, the Game of Thrones line, go to your king, same concept, except in this case it was the prince. So it was like all the forces were like, go, join Eltharion, fight, take the fight to them. Now, as the two forces clashed, Eltharion did manage to duel Malekith. Unfortunately, Malekith did not end up damaging Eltharion, nor did Eltharion manage to kill Malekith. Instead, this duel was nothing more than a setup for the chief assassin, one of the witch elves of Malekith, to deliver a poison directly into Eltharion's back, stabbing him in the back.
Oh,
Skaven
You
activities.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, you know,
yeah. It's all full circle now.
he
Why do
didn't
I feel
have
like
stab-proof armor.
why do
Yeah,
I feel like
hold-
Exo had a hand in this?
Now,
I
hang on.
smell
Here's the thing.
chicanery.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that's most interesting, though, is that after delivering the poison strike to Eltharion, Malekith called his forces off. He straight up was like, "Let them escape. Don't chase them. Let them run." And the thing about the poison is no high elf medicine or magic can heal out to Druki poison is the alchemy of another Druki. So he basically he made Eltharion the same offer again. Join me, and not only will you have the cure to the poison in your body, but you can join me. I will spare you. You are literally being poisoned by the best poison at my disposal. But join me, you'll get the antidote. Now, with the last bit of moments of consciousness in Eltharion, he once again said, suck a fat one, Malekith, get me the fuck out of here. At
Poor
which point his
Chad.
forces immediately fled with Eltharion in their care. But
Absolute Chad. Let's go.
Giga Chad, yeah.
now, unfortunately, the entire journey back to the coast was filled with pain. Like, he was in unimaginable pain. Now, he was also suffering intense delusions and nightmares alongside visions of a dark future because of just the potency of the poison alongside his own magical abilities. But here's where things get most interesting, because after Malekith, lets them escape, he basically tells his forces, don't go after them yet. Give them a head start, which I appreciate from Malekith. Like, you know what? Give them a 5. I can respect this. Give them a 5-second head start, and then go get him.
He's quiet. Too
That's
quiet.
it. We lost him.
Yeah, I think he roboted out again.
Be careful, it's a trap.
All right, good. I knew I'm back. Excellent. I was giving myself a second. All right, so on top of basically Malekith gave them a 5-second head start, somewhat, maybe a couple minute head start. But the reason why he didn't really want to kill Eltharion or his forces on Uthwan, on Nagaroth. The reason why was because he figured that it'd be better for this legendary hero who did all this damage to Nagaroth to die of probably one of the most shameful ways to die possible on the shores of Uthwan itself, because he felt that it would be more of a morale blow than anything he himself could do in that moment.
Mhm.
So that should also put into some value of how much Malekith somewhat respects Eltharion. Like, you know what? You're such a cool dude. I want you to join me. No? How about this? I'll poison you and you join me. No. Okay, well, you know what? Good. Die in your homeland. You're such a cool guy. Your death will cripple them emotionally, and then I can invade.
Damn.
So I can respect both sides in this. Now, the thing is, they did make it to the coast, and they would end up sailing back across the sea back to Uthwan. They would end up in the Kingdom of Grace? No, Trace. In the Kingdom of Trace. Which was basically where they were. That was basically the closest thing they get to the closest port they can make it to without, dying.
This is a really slow poison.
Poison. And they would end up setting shop on the coast where Eltharion, who was still in pain, literally screaming in pain, was placed in his tent. And the idea was that everyone present was kind of just going to accept the fact that he wasn't going to survive the night. Let's let him just rest in his tent by himself. We'll give him all the creature comforts he can while he's resting, and come morning, we'll have to bury our prince. and they all kind of just went to bed, slumbering, kind of just expecting that next morning they would find a dead elf. They would find a dead warrior, a dead hero. They would, the guy who led an invasion of Nagaroth and actually sacked the city of Nagaron would die. That didn't happen though, because while he was drifting in and out of consciousness, while he was struggling to survive, Eltharion would actually experience a vision. Now, it wasn't uncommon for him to have visions because of the poison, but this vision was almost too real. It was too real because what this vision was Eltharion in his home city. His home city being Athol Tormala, I think it's called Athol Tormala. And he was standing in this city that was currently ablaze. Like the entire thing was on fire. And while he was just standing there in effectively shock and horror of what the hell was going on, he would end up hearing something. And that was the voice of his father. He would turn to see him and would see his father was soaked in blood. Not just that, but he was dead. He was effectively a walking corpse. He was a revenant. He was basically a ghost is the best way to put it. And Eltharion would be so shocked at what was happening, the horror that was going on. And then he would realize that not only was the city ablaze, but his home was ablaze. The palace that he called home, his castle, was on fire and in ruin. And not only was his father standing before him as a revenant, but his brother Angelon was dead. And he would see his father, who was, covered in wounds. He was dead, but he did not die, alone. He died fighting. And Moranion, who was his father, said that their homeland, the homeland of
No.
And he's gone.
All right. So, where'd I cut out?
His homeland was on fire, basically.
Yes. His homeland was on fire. And the reason why his home village was on fire was because they were being attacked by a very powerful force of goblins. Which, goblins, because shockingly, unlike in 40k where Gretchen are basically just not important, in Warhammer Fantasy, goblins are actually very integral to the series and are basically on par with orcs when it comes to their lore representation. Yeah. So not only was his homeland on fire, his home was in ruins. His father was dead, but so was his brother Angelon, and his father explained that the goblins were being led by a very powerful goblin war boss called Grom the Paunch, who was an extremely obese goblin. He was so fat and so big, he was the size of an orc.
Please refer to our episode on the orcs for future context.
Further
context.
So, Grom the Paunch was this incredibly fat goblin. And yeah, there he is.
There we go.
Now, if you're wondering why he's so rotund,
It's that boy.
He ended up eating troll meat, and trolls have an inherent ability to regenerate nonstop. So the troll meat that he ate kept regenerating inside of him, which would normally cause a goblin to explode. In Grom's case, it just made him grow.
That sounds like the most orc/goblin thing.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
Now-
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Now, on top of having this, nightmarish vision of a giant fat goblin destroying his homeland, he just got back from raiding Nagaroth and being poisoned. So already he's not doing great. Now while this was going on, his father Moranion would actually present Eltharion with something. It was the familial sword called Sunfang. And the thing about Sunfang is, imagine very similar to like Dawn in Game of Thrones, where it's a sword that's passed on not from like parent to child, but from the greatest warrior in the family to the next one. And it isn't just like an inheritance thing. It's like you earn this sword. This sword not only not this sword. You don't just have to earn it, but it will choose you. It'll empower you if it chooses you.
It's a much
And
smarter way to
Moranion
do
present magic weapon is magic.
Who'd have thunk?
Yes, and Moranion presents it to Eltharion, who again is dying at this point. But even though he is dying, he accepts the sword and swears on his father and brother's deathbed, like while they're in this vision, effectively, that he will defeat Grom the Paunch and save Yvresse. And whether the sword itself did it or this declaration of what he was going to do made the sword choose him, it's not certain. But what happened was the next morning, when Eltharion woke up, he was fully healed. His wounds were not only were his wounds healed, but the poison was gone. It was as if the Sun Fang burned it all out of him.
Hmm.
And empowered by this newfound ability, he took his forces and went straight home, like straight home. He's going to face Grom and see what the hell's going on. The problem is when he would reach his homeland, or rather not his homeland, he would reach his home city, it was a little destroyed. Well, I shouldn't say a little destroyed.
It's completely
It was
destroyed.
basically still being sacked by the goblins. Like they were effectively partying in its ruins.
Perfect time to show up and Rohan that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How is
Rohan,
this guy
sorry.
not the hero of the setting?
He's the hero of my setting.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why we like him.
Oh yeah.
So, as a result, though, they would try to fight Grom the Paunch, but his forces were very powerful. And not only that, Grom wasn't just leading goblins, just as a really rotund monster. Grom also had the assistance of a goblin shaman, and this shaman was not only was it just an incredibly powerful shaman, but it had an intrinsic knowledge and awareness of the Waystones. So if you don't know what the Waystones are, for those who remember our first episode on the Old Ones built a number of temple cities across the planet that stabilized magic. A bunch of them were destroyed. The elves would end up creating the vortex to stabilize magic again. The elves, with the assistance of the Old Ones, ended up actually creating Waystones. And what these Waystones are is they're almost like mini temple cities. They're no way as strong as temple cities are. And you take probably 1,000 to appropriate one temple city. But the thing is that they were typically localized across Uthwan and the Old World. Yeah. And that's basically what they are. They're basically just like mini temple cities, and they're meant to work in concert with one another, stabilizing the vortex. So, because of his knowledge of the Waystone network, Grom the Paunch's little shaman ally was destroying them. Like he was basically telling Grom where to attack, and these places that they were attacking were places that had Waystones. And by destroying these Waystones, it made magic across Uthwan unstable. So not only did it make magic unstable, making it so that if you were, say, an elven wizard, your magic might deflect, it might bounce back and hit you. But it also made Grom the Paunch's shaman all the more powerful through the chaotic nature of the free-flowing energy made by the unstable Waystones. So, not great. Now,
Yeah, not great.
because of this and the overwhelming number of the goblins, they were not able to defeat them, or rather, they were not able to stop them from sacking the city. However, they were able to follow them on their second attack on the next nearby city, that being the capital city and the only major metropolitan city in Yvresse, being Tor Yvresse. Basically, Tor means it basically means the city of that kingdom. So Tor Yvresse would be the city state of Uth would be the city-state of the Ivres Kingdom. So, Tori Ivres was being sacked by Grom the Pontius forces, and Eltharion arrives to basically commit some, basically to direct his rage that he had towards the Druki towards them. Now, this
He
did
replaced
result
his bonus stat of hate Druki to hate Goblin.
Sometimes you need
Yep.
like a diversion. You have a new enemy, but you can't forget the old enemy. You have to remember how much you hate him.
Yeah. Yes. Now, because I should also mention the destruction they were causing on the city of Tori Rest was kind of brutal, like unnecessarily so. But what can you do? Specifically, a lot of stuff about children and like women and children basically being like they slaughtered the women and children after they forced a bunch of soldiers to escape. It's pretty brutal. But because of this, because Eltharion not in respects, he values elven life so much. Seeing all this desecration of not just the waystones of elven culture, but all the amount of deaths that Grom was causing, Eltharion kind of lost it a little bit. But he didn't lose it to the point of berserker rage like he did against Malekith. That was his mistake. He was aware of that, and he actually really intensely blames himself for that mistake because he's like, no, I lost my cool. That wasn't cool. I need to reel back a little bit, even if all these elves that are dying are really fucking pissing me off.
Yeah.
So what he did was he trusted some of his most skilled and some of his most skilled warriors and gave them a mission. That mission was to straight up abandon the battlefield, to basically make his forces weaker, to inspire Grom and his forces to attack them. Now, while those forces were fleeing, Eltharion basically let his rage loose. He was basically holding it back for a good period of time before they started attacking, at which point he lost his cool and started attacking the shaman in particular. He left Grom alone because he knew that Grom was basically a figurehead in this point. He fought the shaman in the air and on top of Stormwing, which is his personal griffin, they did battle. Now, the problem was that as Eltharion tried to get closer, the shaman kept shooting more and more powerful magics at him. And every single time he would try to avoid it, he would try to deflect it, but he would occasionally get hit. And there was only so long that Eltharion could hold on to this battle before, the shaman blasted him again. And there was only so many more hits he could take. The thing is that the reason they attacked Tori Vrest wasn't just it was because it was a capital city. Tori Vrest has a waystone there. So the purpose wasn't just to take the city; it was to take the city and destroy the waystones. Luckily, however, because Eltharion realized this and knew that they were specifically targeting the waystones, those forces that he sent away, he sent them to garrison the waystone, and he waited. He waited. He was basically buying time because when his forces got into position and secured the waystone network, they were able to perform basically a ritual because all elves know some degree of magic. These elven forces that he had there, they created a ritual that allowed it to temporarily stabilize the Waystone network. It was basically like, everyone fucking hold your breath. As long as we're holding their breath, we can stabilize. Like, I'm being hyperbolic. They didn't actually hold their breath. But it was like, if we can stabilize magic for just a single fucking second, that's all we need. Which they did. Because just as the shaman was about to deliver the most powerful attack at his disposal onto Eltharion, it stopped. It literally fizzled out in his hand. The shaman realized very quickly that he did not have his magic anymore. As for a brief second, complete order returned to the world as magic instantly stabilized itself across Uthman for just a single second. And in that second, across Stormwing, he flew at full speeds, drew his sword, the Sunfang, and decapitated the shaman in that single second. Now, killing the goblin did not stop killing the goblin shaman did not stop the other goblins, but it did eventually cause a lot of them to lose their morale and leave. Grom, however, just kept fighting because he's Grom the Punch and no one's gonna mess with him. Until he was like, you know what? I'm the only one here. This isn't fun anymore. And I'm kind of being serious. Like, he literally fought until there was like no more of his allies, and he realized, oh, I'm by myself.
I'm bored.
I'm bored. Bye.
Basically, yeah. But the thing was, Eltharion was not done with these orcs. Well, I shouldn't say orcs because they're goblins, they're not orcs. Uh, he ended up actually chasing the goblins out of the city, like straight up chasing them and running them down. He killed as many of them as they could, and it's apparently stated. It's not stated. Basically, at some point, it's claimed that Eltharion did end up fighting Grom and killing them, although his body was never discovered. So it's uncertain if Eltharion did actually kill him. But what is known is that after hunting the goblins to the point that they could not be found anymore, Eltharion and his forces would return to Tori Vres and the Waystone, where Eltharion said that the sorcerers, the wizards inside were still there trying to stabilize magic. He went up there with the intent of helping them. The thing was, after a full night and day, Eltharion came down. And he came down alone. And when he came down, his face looked worse. Like, you know how I said that he was kind of like, he kind of changed a little bit, got a little bit more edgy? After coming down from this tower from Tori Vres and stabilizing the Waystone Network, he had such a shift in mood and attitude. He was henceforth known as Eltharion the Grim. And he did not speak of what he had to do in the Waystone Tower. Just that whoever was up there was not coming down.
That's a little grim, no pun intended.
It's a little ominous what he did. Like no one knows what he did, just that he doesn't talk about it, and that after he did it, he had a noticeable attitude shift.
What
like
was
a
the
very noticeable.
What was the One Piece line? Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. However, because of what he did, because he was so amazing at defeating the goblins.
Oh, here he goes again.
And he died. Big sad.
Sterling freaked out on me. So after what a warden is instead of being selected as the king of a region, you're selected as the Lord Protector. So his job was just to protect it. He wasn't the king. He didn't really have any political power, but he kind of did. His job was basically just the protection of Tori Vres. And from the moment he was elected as warden, he put reforms into motion. Like in record time, Tori Vres wasn't just rebuilt, but it was so much more heavily fortified. Like he locked the city down.
Bro saw one video on the Imperial Fist and said yes.
Kind of, but also a little bit more extreme. Like he imposed martial law.
I mean, that sounds like something the Imperial Fists would do too, so.
Well, yes, but it was like, he became warden of the city, built it, and was like, "Hey, we are imposing martial law now. Like, we are locking this stuff down. This city is not being taken." And during his rulership, as warden, he may have committed some crimes against humanity.
Crimes against Elvenanity?
Well, here's how I'll put it, okay? Anyone who he believed was a potential threat to, the ideology of the elves, to not elven supremacy, to elven nationalism, was arrested. And so under the city of Tori Vres is basically his own Batcave, but replaced Batcave with would you put it? Because like dungeon is one word for it.
Torture
chamber. No, interrogation chamber is a better way of putting it.
Okay, fair enough.
Same difference.
And it's stated that he has. It's okay. Imagine a dungeon interrogation chamber. But there's not just elves in it. There's also Druki, potentially some orcs even, as well as people from Bretonia and the Empire alongside Norskin raiders. Now, what he does in these dungeons can vary anything from summary executions, like, hey, this person, these are the crimes this person committed, I am executing them. And this basically is like to not only inspire fear in his enemies, but like a degree of righteousness in his people. Like, yeah, you get that guy, you kill him for what he did. But alternatively, he does interrogate them to get all the secrets and weaknesses of the enemy force, and he will continue to interrogate them until he is certain there is nothing more he can glean from them, using
torture
any
chambers.
means available.
Well, see, now it just sounds like he listened to he saw a video on the Dark Angels and said yes.
Oh yeah.
kind of.
Specifically, their interrogator chaplains.
Yeah. Kind of. Basically, that's what he did. And typically, these interrogations continue on until the person dies as a result of the interrogation. So he can't really execute them because he kills them as a result. Like, I've gotten everything out of them, but let's make sure I've got everything out of them.
I feel like I'm about to shoot myself in the foot here, but I'm noticing a severe lack of dwarves being mentioned in these interrogation chambers. So, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You know what? I haven't seen anything about dwarves in the chamber, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was.
I'm gonna have it as my headcanon that until we until we know for sure there were no dwarves.
Because,
in
like,
those
from what I understand, it's anyone of political importance that could be of value. Like, when I mean that he collects people from the Empire, I don't just mean like Joe Schmo. This guy's a fucking tanner. No, like he might collect like a noble from the Empire who he
Like the
considers
word
a
collect.
threat.
collect.
Yeah.
Pulling a trays in the infinite.
We'll say collect. I prefer the term black bag.
Yeah. Extraordinary rendition, maybe. Yeah.
And you know how I said, the elves, like I said, they'll defend someone if they're in danger. Well, you know what? And I said, like, let's say the Empire and Bretonia go to war, and then the elves consider that maybe they might be a threat. Eltharion's the same way, but for individual people.
Yeah.
Like, it isn't like, oh, this faction is growing a little bit too powerful, they might attack us, let's attack them first. No, it's this guy might become a threat that might in the long term affect the cultural beliefs of the society that will in one day, potentially thousands of years in the future, lead them to attacking the elves.
Yeah.
Let's change that.
I mean,
This guy once said the Druki are okay.
I mean, I can definitely see the Batman analogy with this because that's like the level of paranoia that Batman has, and I can easily see that.
Oh, he has contingency plans.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's what the interrogations lead to. Like he develops like specific strategies tailored to defeating people. Like let's say he captures a Druki and he knows that like this specific band of Druki are really good at naval warfare. Okay, well he'll create a plan that makes sure that their ships land in like shallow waters and then he'll attack them. Like after he interrogates them, he tailors situations to defeating them. But on top of that, my favorite thing that he may or may not do for legal purposes only, he also has a potential to indoctrinate them.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't mean like indoctrinate them to the beliefs of the high elves, like, oh, we're brainwashing them. No, I mean he might make you like a sleeper agent for your own faction.
Yeah.
Like he might, let's say, capture a Norskin raider and brainwash them so that when they see the next Jarl, the next Everchosen, the next leader, they might just try to assassinate them without like just outside of their control and awareness.
Just based MK Ultra shit.
Ulfric Stormcloak.
He's pretty cool. I enjoy. Yeah, you know what? Oh my god, this is literally what happened to Ulfric Stormcloak. You guys are right.
The word Thalmor came to mind a couple times during some of that. Yeah.
Hi-oh.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Maybe I do like the Thalmor.
High Elf SS members.
You know what? Honestly, the Thalmor are not extreme enough for Eltharion. Now, on the bright side, after Eltharion does have some redeemable qualities besides, the numerous war crimes he commits.
I don't know.
Well, they're not war
All
crimes.
that was pretty redeemable, honestly. He did it for his people. It's fine.
Yeah, it's for his people, even if the crimes are against his own people.
Nah, don't worry about that. You got to break a few eggs,
Have you ever made an omelet?
Oh, I should mention he does this to criminals within his city, obviously. So if you're a criminal, you're gonna affect the long-term stability of the Elven society. You're getting interrogated today, buddy. Where's the gang leaders? I'm not part of a gang leader, I swear. No, you're part of a gang. I know you are.
Oh, so you're the gang leader, a gang of one.
Sometimes
Let's
that's all
see
it
how-
takes.
Let's see how much you're willing to say after I remove all your fingers.
Oh no. Why do I feel like there's a lot of trumped up charges involved in all this?
He's trying to silence me. Help!
I was gonna say your silence is deafening. Jeez, I wasn't even trying to make. Never mind. I'm not going there.
Oh my goodness. Luckily, though, after Eltharion, does his thing with making sure Tori Vress is stable, he decides, those goblins are fucking assholes. So, after not only does he fortify his city, he then puts into motion basically a kingdom-wide draft. Like, for the protection of our kingdom and Uthwan itself, we are raising an army. Like, not a standing army. The entire standing army of the kingdom is going to war, and I am leading it.
Hell yeah.
And he straight up leads an invasion, not of Nagaroth, because he's already been there. He goes all the way around the old world and straight up invades the Badlands. Tosi, could you please pull up a map of the Warhammer Fantasy world, just the entire map, so we can get an idea of just how far he sailed? But yes, so he ended up sailing across the old world into the Badlands, which, for anyone who doesn't know, the Badlands are basically a place where the orcs reign. So let's pull up the first map, the very top map. Yeah, that one. All right. So you see Uthwan, the donut in the ocean. He sailed around Araby and then went to the Darklands, which have the Badlands in them.
Holy cow, wouldn't it be easier to just go straight through here?
No, fuck that.
I'm taking a
Oh, I
long
know the
way.
Badlands are there. Yeah. So yeah, no, he went out around Astalia. Sorry, not Araby. Astalia's there, but either way, he went to the Badlands and fucked up the orcs. Now, the point of the matter is, it doesn't matter how far he sailed. The point that I'm making is, after he went to the Badlands, so you know how he saw his family die as a result of the Goblin invasion. This gave him a little bit of PTSD alongside even more extreme survivor's guilt. Now, because of this, he decided the best way to use his PTSD was to inflict it on all the other orcs. So, during
Sharing
the
is
initial
caring.
invasion of the Badlands, he straight up traumatized a good amount of orcs. Like, he would go in, his forces with such extreme prejudice, murder everything, and to the point that orcs stopped wanting to fight him. Like, during the initial invasion, he was so extreme, so ruthless, so total in his annihilation of the orcs that many of them refused to fight him at first. Because after the initial shock of his invasion, started to wear off, and it started to become more, I guess, acknowledged of his presence there, it stopped becoming something to fear and something to challenge. And eventually, his initial, shock and awe became one of open attack, as a bunch of orc war bosses alongside their forces started trying to actually seek him out specifically, because rumor had it that he would give them a good fight. And the thing is that he kept fighting these forces. As they would come back and fight him, he would hunt them down, kill them again, and they would retreat. And once again, they would come back to fight him. And every single time they would come back, he noted that they would come back bigger, stronger, and worst of all, smarter.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem.
Now, even though this was happening, he continued to hunt them. He continued to fight all these orc wars that were going on in there. They were coming to seek him. But the problem was he started to notice something. Not only were these orcs that were coming to fight him getting stronger and everything like that, but if they couldn't reach him, like let's say he was too far from an orc band that wanted to fight him, they would just attack another orc band nearest to them. And if they defeated the other orc warband, they would just absorb any survivors, making them even stronger. But if both of those orc warbands were equally strong, they would then start fighting each other and growing even more powerful from their own infighting. Now, what's worse is that if there were orcs nearby, let's say there was an orc warband to the very far north of the Badlands, near Talia. Well, let's say they don't want to fight Eltharion because of how far he is. They might spill out of the Badlands and into any neighboring nations, be that Araby, be that Tilia, be that Estalia, the Empire, even Bretonia was having increased orc invasions because they either couldn't reach Eltharion and they were the closest targets, or these orc warbands were just wandering around and ended up spilling into their territory. This includes not the orcs. This includes the dwarf holes that are being attacked by the orcs, which as a result, because of Eltharion's own belief and like his own dutiful opinions, he would actually come to the aid of every single one of these people that needed his help. So let's say these orcs were invading the Empire. He would move to the Empire to help fight them and help save the Empire, because these orcs were basically these orc invasions were basically his own fault, because he was giving the orcs such a good fight that they started seeking out more fighting. So it was effectively an infinite cycle that was instantly on repeat. So he was kind of the problem, but also kind of the solution. Oh, and when he was helping the dwarf holds, every single one that he helped was like, fuck off, we don't need your help. But he still helped them anyway.
Otherwise, there'd probably be less dwarves walking around.
I mean, he wanted to help them. It wasn't like, I'm good, I'm too good for you. No, it was like, I am genuinely feeling bad that I'm somewhat responsible for this. Let me help you and keep you guys safe. But there was a problem. Eltharion believed that eventually he would make a mistake. Eventually he would fuck up. And even if it took a million successes for him to have one fuck up, it would eventually happen in his force. Something would happen to his army that he would get defeated. And eventually that would mean that if he died, there'd be no one to stop all these ever-amassing forces of orcs that were even more powerful, tougher, harder to kill, and smarter, that were just let loose in the world because of him. So, realizing this, he basically fought his way out of the Badlands and basically started teasing the orcs. Like, he would try to incite conflict with them before retreating to basically not exhaust them, but make it so that they didn't have anything to fight. He was trying to starve them of conflict so that they would eventually get weaker, easier to kill, and be less intelligent. And then he basically abandoned the Badlands altogether. Now, I should add, though, that because he did this, he did solve the problem at first, and then he created another problem. And then he fixed it by basically abandoning it altogether. So, I mean,
As
typical elven victory.
typical elves are wont to do so.
I'm going back to my island.
Well, you guys can kind of see his philosophy, though, kind of taking root, where it's like you guys can see that this is obviously his philosophy, where it's like, I'm going to stop these orcs. Oh, shit, these orcs are spilling out. I'm going to solve this problem by fighting them. Oh, shit, by fighting them and making them stronger. My only option to make this better is to leave. Which he did. He's a pretty decent guy. He could have just, he could have just not made them weaker and just let them steamroll the Empire. But I mean, let's be honest. The coolest part, though, besides Altharion's war with the orcs, is his rivalry with the Druki, because Altharion's lore seems to have this issue where he goes places, comes back, here's another issue. Because upon returning to Tori Vrest and having some time to settle, the next invasion by Naggaroth happens.
Oh gosh.
Which Eltharion realized, fuck, I just got back, but you know what? Fuck this. Fuck Malekith. Fuck him for what he did. I'm gonna fuck him up.
Oh yeah,
I'm
now
gonna
we're
mess
talking.
him up. What was that, Astro?
Said, oh yeah, here we go. Now we're talking.
Round 2.
Round 2, Electric Malekith. So the thing was, though, when Malekith invaded, he kind of repeated the process of going through the gates, but instead of like pushing up northward into Naggaroth, he kept going towards the center, towards the vortex, and towards the central kingdom. What is it called? Avalon. Avalon, that's what it's called. He would go towards the center kingdom with the intention of killing the Everqueen because look, I'm not covering the Everqueen right now. We'll get to it at another point. Regardless, he wanted to kill the Everqueen. Eltharion said, fuck that shit, I'm fighting you again. So, round 2 Electric Boogaloo happens. This time Malekith doesn't have an assassin behind him. Instead, he ends up dueling Malekith once again. This time, though, Eltharion is defeated. Like, straight up, he gets beaten. He gets beaten, Stormwind gets knocked down, and Eltharion is defeated. But Malekith doesn't kill him. Because, again, Malekith still wants him to join him. So he makes the offer again. Join me, and I'll let you live. Eltharion once again says, fuck off, Malekith. You're not an elf. To which point Malekith says, bet. Take him home. And they straight up kidnap Eltharion and leave. With the implication being this entire invasion was just so that Malekith could nab Eltharion.
So the black bagger got black bagged.
Basically. And in a
Actual bags.
cruel twist of irony, Malekith inflicted all sorts of tortures onto Eltharion.
Oh shit.
Damn. Now, I gotta imagine Malekith had some level of surprise when he found out that bro here just completely survived the Naggaroth's greatest poison.
He heard about Malekith. Like, Malekith heard about Eltharion and was, again, impressed. Like, he's like, fuck. This guy is fucking awesome. Like, he killed so many of my people. He sacked so many of my cities. He survived their greatest poison, and now he's making the orcs into crorks? Fuck, give him here.
Need this guy on my team.
Can this guy change teams, please? No? Fuck it, we'll make him. Now, the thing was, ironically, once again, any attempt to try and convince Eltharion to join was met with resistance because while Eltharion is not too is well versed in the interrogation tactics, he's also really good at keeping his own sanity and not breaking. Like, this guy interrogates people for a living, he can take an interrogation or two. We tried waterboarding him. He said, "Bring it on." We tried the water droplet test. He said he can't get any crazier. We tried the bamboo test. He ate the bamboo.
Well, it's like that scene from The Dictator where the guy's trying to torture him and it's just not working out and it's just pathetic.
Yeah. Just like, oh, you didn't get the splash. You didn't get the splash guard.
The splash
Well,
guard.
no.
It almost feels like you don't want to be tortured.
That's you know what we're gonna make a meme. That's Eltharion is the fucking dictator. Malekith is the fucking torturer guy. Sounds like you don't want to be tortured. Oh my god, hang on. YouTube. You gotta get that fucking scene plan. But yeah, so after the attempt to interrogate Eltharion doesn't work, Malekith says, "Okay, you know what? Fine. Fine. Buddy doesn't want to be interrogated. Buddy doesn't want to join us. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make him fucking blind."
Nice.
Oh, okay.
The
Yeah,
most reasonable solution.
well, it was basically this guy is too good. We can't break him, but I also don't want to kill him because killing him would okay. It isn't like plot armor. I want to kill him. It's more like if he's alive and humiliated and can't fight, he's gonna Malekith plays the long game, but I feel like if he just played the short game a little bit, he might actually win more often. Like, he's playing like 4-dimensional chess, but like right now we're playing checkers, buddy. You can tone down the elaborate plans a little bit.
He's so obsessed with his own elaborate plans, he's just failing to see the forest and the trees here.
Yeah. Like if he would have executed him and like sent his head back, I feel like that would have been a bit more of a demoralizing blow. But Malekith's idea was to blind him and continuously torture him because he knew that Uthwan would send a rescue force to free him because he was just that guy, which they did, and Malekith let them take him back home. Like he put up a fight. Obviously, he tried to kill as many of them as he could, but at the end of the day, his goal was to let them take him home. Because on top of so when Eltharion returned home, not only was he beaten and like tortured to the 9th degree, interrogated beyond belief, but he was also blind, effectively making him not a great soldier or warrior or leader anymore. The best he could do was be a figurehead. He had lost his ability to properly be a combatant on the battlefield. And Malekith renamed Eltharion from Eltharion the Grim to Eltharion the Blind as an insult.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Now, thinking about Eltharion, you may think, "Wow, this guy must feel really shitty." No, because he decides, "Fuck it, if I can't be Batman, I'll be Daredevil."
Close enough.
Sure.
Now, you think I'm joking? No, I'm not. He basically went to work relearning everything he has ever learned, but learning to do it blind. And through just sense of smell, sense of taste, his own sense of feeling, everything, plus his own innate determination and skill, he ended up basically becoming just as good, if not better, than he used to be without his eyesight. Because he learned to see more. He basically had like Toph's seismic sense, but he had like Fujitora from like fucking One Piece sight. Like he could see, Daredevil's sonic sight. Imagine that, but on top of that, he could also see where to hit you so that you're at your weakest point.
Right. He gets that Mortal Kombat X-ray vision of your body.
Yeah, basically. He had the fucking Sharingan going. No, not Sharingan. He had the Byakugan going on, even though he was blind. I think only Toast is gonna get that reference, but yeah. So
yeah.
Now, again, he was still a prolific swords master. He was still a great warrior. Now, the thing about Eltharion is, after spending months, like not years, months, relearning everything that he had learned up to that point. So again, centuries worth of information. He just started speed learning it because he was blind. Once he was back to his full peak, he decided that, you know what? Malekith wants to fucking go. He wants to take my eyes. Fuck him. Let's go round 3. Now, do you guys remember me? Do you guys remember me mentioning a Conrad Kurz elf?
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
That would be Alith Anar. He is the prince of the Shadowlands, otherwise known as Nagarath. So the Anar family has hated Marathi's family for like since since the beginning. They've just had this rivalry going on. Like they've always Greymane Battleborn thing. They basically just had this like ancestral feud. And when Marathi's family got kicked out and went to Nagaroth, the Anar family took control of Nagarythe. Elithanar, because of this like familial feud with Marathi's family, despised the Dark Elves almost as much as Eltharion. And so Eltharion went to him and said, "Hey, Malekith took my eyes. You want to help me fuck him up?" And Elithanar was like, "Can I skin them?" I'm
Okay.
somewhat joking. I am somewhat joking. So imagine this, all right? What I've described about Eltharion, his interrogation chamber, his very brutal mentality. Now combine that with Elithanar, who likes to make dark elves in no fear. Like this guy has been known to string up the severed corpses of Druki across the forests to inspire fear in any other Druki forces traveling through that region.
Let's
Like
go.
he fights guerrilla wars against all of Nagaroth himself.
Must be done.
It must be done. And they actually ended up, going to war. Going to war with Nagaroth. Though, unfortunately, this war kind of just ended in a stalemate. Like, Malekith and Eltharion, I don't believe got to fight. I don't believe they fought a third time. I believe they were going... No, they did fight. They did fight, but it ended in a draw because Malekith tried to pull the assassin trick again on him. Which, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Because turns out being blind made him detect the assassin this time.
I mean, I could just only think there's Lord Malekith, you have a note. What does the note say? I live, bitch.
I honestly,
And
that's a good point.
I lived, bitch, and I'm making it your problem.
That's Eltharion's whole identity. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's the orcs or the Druki. But so they ended up fighting. But yeah, there was no winner because Malekith tried to pull the assassin trick on him again. Eltharion was able to detect it because he was somewhat his blindness basically made him have higher senses. He did get injured, but not to the point of dying. And it basically ended in a draw, both sides kind of separating. But this is where the lore gets kind of messed up because I'm not sure if this was a retcon or not.
Mhm.
We're gonna get to the end time.
Yep, here we go.
Is in the end times, Eltharion got his vision back. Or rather, between when we last see Eltharion, which is retreating from Nagaroth and resettling on Uthman, become once again Warden of Tori Vress, to the start of the end times, he has his vision again. It doesn't really say why, so I'm going to assume the blind part was a retcon, because I know in very old lore, it was the Dark Elves who burned down Eltharion's home city, but they ended up breaking that apart to make it so that it was Druki was one half of his origin story and goblins were the other. Originally, it was just all Druki. But yeah.
Now you say old lore. At what point are we making the distinction between "quote unquote" old lore and then I guess what is widely considered, current lore or whatever?
In third edition to fourth edition, between editions, there was a change where in third edition, Eltharion was just his rivalry was just with the Druki, and then in the fourth edition army book, they added Grom the Paunch to the storyline, making it so that instead of him being blinded, basically in the old lore, in the old lore, I believe it's he attacks Nagaroth first, he goes blind, but in his blindness, he sees his father. He gets the sword that cures his blindness, and then leads the invasion of Nagaroth from there, which is the second invasion, which is with Elithanar, and then that's where the lore ended. But in fourth edition, they made it so that when he attacked, he kind of succeeded, kind of not, got poisoned, and then Grom the Pawn showed up. The whole thing that I just covered.
Mm-hmm.
They basically just like flushed his story out a little bit more. They added like a good like 100 years more to his lore.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is where we get to the end times, and I don't want to talk about it.
Hey Ray.
No, shut the fuck up, okay? So here's what happened. Eltharion isn't blind anymore. Tyrion's daughter gets kidnapped because she's important to a ritual to revive Nagash. Eltharion says, "Hey Tyrion, we've always been bros. I've always respected you. If you want to become Phoenix King and start, a coup, I'm totally with you, bro." And Tyrion's like, "You know what? Let's start a fucking coup." And all the kingdoms decide, you know what? Tyrion's a cool guy. His ancestor was an Aryan. Yeah, let's make him Phoenix King. Not officially Phoenix King. He's technically just like he's like the leader of Uthwan, but he doesn't become the Phoenix King officially. And then one of the kingdoms does separate, like it like secedes from Uthwan because they don't want to accept him. They needed someone to be different. And then in order to get Tyrion's daughter back, Eltharion promises to lead the expedition to save her. But he also gets the help of the warrior princess of one of the other kingdoms. He basically gets help from the Reaver one, the one with the Reaver horses. They get Eltharion. Eltharion. They get the princess of Eltharion to assist Eltharion in an invasion to save Tyrion's daughter. The issue is this invasion to save his daughter is going to be in Sylvania, which is a place that is currently, at this point anyway, being overrun by death magic and the undead. And the reason why they need Tyrion's daughter is because she has the essence of Isha inside her, I think. I think she gets possessed by Isha. What happens then? Fuck, I hate the end times so much. Oh, fuck, I hate the end times. Okay. Then, after a failed attempt to take over Sylvania and save the daughter, Eltharion, who has his vision back and is one of the best fighters ever, who can lead an invasion of Nagaroth, fails against an army of zombies, fights Manfred Varkarstein, who is a skilled warrior, I will admit, but he's still a fucking asshole who I fucking hate. And because
There it
of a
is.
failure, Eltharion dies to a fucking spell, okay? He dies to fucking death. He dies to death magic. Someone casted Power Word Kill on him. Fuck, I hate the end times.
Just
Can we
just
talk
like
about just Sigmar now?
just like straight up Avada Kedavra, boom, that's it.
Finished.
He was fighting Vladimir Karstein. Arkhan the Black was trying to perform a ritual to basically sacrifice Tyrion's daughter to resurrect Nagash. And in the moment of the conflict that Tyrion and Manfred are fighting, Arkhan basically has a cheap shot and kills him. I don't hate Arkhan the Black as much as I hate Manfred because Manfred could have stopped the end times, but he didn't because he's a bitch. Regardless, Arkhan the Black is the reason why Eltharion dies because he hits him with Power Word Kill, basically. And Manfred is like, "Oh yeah, we're amazing. Fuck you, super amazing character who everyone loves, especially me. Let's fucking." I don't like it. Okay.
Okay, so Age of Sigmar before
Okay, Age of Sigmar. Excellent. Perfect. Okay. So let's do this. This is awesome. I like Eltharion and Age of Sigmar way more. Okay. So what happens is after the end times happen, all the elven souls got taken into Slaanesh. We've discussed this before. Tyrion, Teclis, and Marathi, using the powers of the elven gods, particularly Assyrian, defeat a glutted, like a very overweight, very full Slaanesh. They defeat her and chain her within the realm between light and shadow and free all the elven souls. Tyrion uses the souls to make the Einanath that's what they're called, which are basically the Dark Elves. We'll cover them at a later point, hopefully, if we do more Age of Sigmar stuff. No, Teclis made them. Tyrion made the Lumineth. After making the Lumineth, Tyrion and Teclis, who were also really good friends with Eltharion and respected him, really wanted to know if he could survive because they started to notice something. A lot of elven souls were reincarnated into new elven bodies when the Lumineth were created. And they started to notice that a number of these reincarnated elves with an A, because copyright reasons, had memories of their past life. So Teclis got the idea. He's basically a god in Age of Sigmar setting. We'll cover Teclis at a later point. He gets the idea that if he could find Eltharion's soul, they could revive him, they could reincarnate him, and he could come back as a Lumineth warrior. The problem is whether it's because of his fractured, kind of stubborn personality, like all the trauma he's endured, whether that has like almost shredded his soul, the ritual was not able to succeed, or his like insane duty and intense personality to the very concept of the High Elves made it so that he kind of rejected the benefit of reincarnation. Whatever the reason is, Eltharion's soul is returned to the realm of the living, but it doesn't get a new body. It isn't reincarnated in a new body. Instead, it basically becomes a revenant, just like his father. And in order to stabilize, in order to keep the soul effectively contained in the mortal plane, Teclis has a pseudo armor forged to contain the spirit within. In addition, the spirit of Eltharion combined with Teclis's magic is actually able to recreate the Sunfang. So Eltharion's sword from fantasy is reforged in Age of Sigmar and is the weapon he wields. He basically becomes a Thousand Suns, not Scarecrow called Terminator. He basically becomes a Rubric Marine, but as a elf in heavy armor wielding basically an ancestral magic sword of fire and awesomeness. The problem, though, is he kind of is very much like a Rubric Marine in that he doesn't have much of himself left. And again, it's uncertain if this is because the ritual failed, his personality is too broken from all the trauma he's endured, how he died, because again, he got hit by death magic in Sylvania, which is a whole other story. Just, he could just have fucked up because maybe his soul just got a little bit too consumed by Slanesh. There's so many reasons why, like possibly why his soul just could not take the reincarnation. But regardless, he is now known as the Light of Eltharion because that's all that's left of him is his light, his idea, his memory is all that's left that is basically animating this suit of armor. Though there are hints that Teclis is trying to fully reincarnate him. And when that happens, I am buying the fuck out of his model. So, thoughts, questions, opinions on our boy Eltharion?
I like him.
I mean, I'll say it. He's pretty based.
Based Eltharion.
Mm-hmm.
Toasty, thoughts on our boy?
Just due to the fact that I connected him to Sanguinius, he's automatically a winner in my book. He might not have his own wings, but he's doing all right.
Hey, he has wings on his helmet. Plus, Stormwing is a fucking better mount than having angel wings.
Whoa.
Oh,
I would rather have a griffin than wings, I'm just saying.
I'd rather have wings than I gotta feed anything else. I feed myself enough.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention one more thing. Speaking of wings, I don't know why I didn't connect this. It also relates to Stormwing. I didn't mention the mist and how that might be their undoing. During the end times, part of the reason why Eltharion actually ended up seeking out Tyrion to become the king, to become the Phoenix King, is because the illusion magic in that area was so strong and so potent that it was actually making demons able to manifest in the lands in the kingdom of Yvresse.
Friends and families.
Your friends and family, maybe.
Look, chaos isn't that bad, guys. Look.
Your thoughts on our boy, the elf who only kills Druki and potentially sometimes interrogates fellow elves?
I mean, sounds like my kind of elf, honestly, but I digress.
I think the interrogation really adds to it. Oh, I think my cat is stuck somewhere. You're crying. But yes. So I believe that is everything. Yes, that is everything I have on Eltharion. So, Gerald, shall we bring this episode to an end and discuss any announcements, our Patreons, any news additional from there?
Yeah, sure. Don't worry, we
Right.
will get we're this will probably be our thing now for streaming episodes. So we will be sure to post links to the Discord for you lovely patrons to listen in on us, and feel free and comments. Just keep things civil, please, because this is being live streamed. So please be on your best behavior. We're still getting the VIP section stuff worked out. Renovations are still underway. And don't worry, you'll get a fully edited audio of for the podcast on our per our regularly scheduled releases and everything.
Yes.
That's all I have off the top of my head right now. So are there any other announcements that you want to make?
I just want to say that I hope people enjoyed this live version of our episodes. Things were a bit hectic at the start just because we are trying to figure this out. This is our first time using StreamYard. It's pretty fun so far, though. I like the live version. If you guys want to hop in and join us, feel free to, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is obviously just Grimlore, and watch us live. We're going to try and work on the times because it's a little late. So we understand that people.
Oop, I think it did. Hello.
Ray's Discord hates us.
It really it does hate us.
Oh, wait, this isn't through Discord. Just Ray's microphone.
Oh no, his laptop died.
Oh boy.
Wah, wah, wah.
Well, shuckles.
Yeah, shut it
I
down,
guess
co-host.
I guess until he comes back on. So yeah. So as of right now, this is episode 32 in our repertoire. We have a very special episode 33 planned for y'all later, and don't worry, there will be Tavern Lore. This is just kind of a proof of concept for the live streaming version of our show. So we're just trying to work all the kinks out and everything, and seeing what Rayway's typing in the chat is making is making me laugh so hard right now. but basically, jeez, oh my goodness. So basically, yeah, this is all proof of concept stuff. So we'll get back to our regularly scheduled stuff and everything. And so I'm going to go thank our patron. Thank our patrons real quick, and then we will round this out here. So to the Honorable Grail Knight, Sir Flub de Montfort, the Noble Chaos Dwarf Slappy, the Imperial Dwarven Knight, Astronautical, the Trickster Noble Warper, the Noble Power Lifter of Nurgle, Big Joe G, the Noble Island Pirate Dwarf King Admiral Altair Warlord Exodite, Replacer, Central Lover, and Night Smoker, the Old Pipe, Electric Peace Bro Master Founder James Complaints, Part Man for Fish, Fan, Atomic Bong, El Marquis, Farmer, Secret God, Emperor, Dad Hammer, Storage, Lover, the Farmer, Wife Man, the Machete, Airbnb host, Crew Fanboy, Curly Hunter, Magic Dead Builder, Arbias, Fanboy, Fisherman, Panama, Warhammer, Host, Listener, Loris, Phil Tarkin, Mark and Beehouse, Painter of the Knights, the Eternal, the Collectors of the Dwarves, the Erebor, Lorehammer Revivalist, the Enshrouded, he who reads lore, the Canadian Panamanian, aka Trevor Bezek, and Father, Mark from Lorehammer. Whew.
That was crazy.
The Noble Scryer Skaven, Exo Flat Claw, the Wizard Noble of Zinch, Magnus the Rad, the Druki Pirate King, Dungledew Scale Cop. I hope Nurgle stops blessing you so you can join back up with us. The Noble Priestess Slanesh, Zane Leopard, the Crosscore Knight of Corn Toasty, and the Errant Plague Knight, De las Rosas. So, Have a good night, everyone. Ray wishes you all good night. He loves you all. Bye bye.
Night
Have a
night.
good one.